Welcome to Speak English with Tiffany. I am teacher Tiffany, and today we are going to learn the 18th secret to speaking English. How to introduce yourself in English. This secret will improve your ability to speak like a native English speaker. Are you ready? Well then, let's jump right in. As an English learner, one of the first things that you must do is learn how to introduce yourself in English. But the question is, how can you properly introduce yourself in English? What information should you give, and what is the right order? Well, if you have ever asked yourself these questions, this lesson is definitely for you. Today, I will teach you the best method for introducing yourself in English. Let's look at this method together. Introducing yourself in English can be viewed as a circle made up of 3 parts. Part 1 is life. This is where you talk about who you are and where you are from. Part 2 is hobby. This is where you talk about your hobby and the reason why you chose it. And Part 3 is dream. This is where you describe your dreams about the future. Now, we understand what each part basically is, but let's go into more detail so that we can understand exactly how to properly introduce ourselves. To do this, we must break down each individual part. Let's start with Part 1. Part 1 is, once again, life. For this part, we will select 3 of the 5 W's: who, where, and what. Now we will write down a short piece of information for each of these W's. For who, we can say name. For where, we can say hometown or native country. And for what, we can say character and personality. So let's look at an example for Part 1. For who, we have Peter. For where, we have Spain. For what, we have diligent and outgoing person. Now, let's see how this will be said in an actual introduction. Hello, my name is Peter and I am from Spain. I am a very diligent and outgoing person. This is a very clear and concise way of introducing yourself for Part 1. Next, let's move on to Part 2. Part 2, once again, is hobby. For this part, we will also select 3 of the 5 W's: what, why, and when. Now we will write down a short piece of information for each of these W's. For what, we can say hobby. For why, we can say the main reason for choosing that hobby. And for when, we can say when you usually do that hobby. So let's look at an example for Part 2. For what, we have playing the piano. For why, we have I love classical music. And for when, we have every evening after work. This is how Part 2 would sound. My hobby is playing the piano. I love classical music, so I usually play the piano every evening after work. This is also a very clear and concise way of introducing yourself for Part 2. Finally, let's look at Part 3. Part 3 is, once again, dream. For this part, we will once again select 3 of the 5 W's: what, when, and why. Now we will write down a short piece of information for each of these W's. For what, we can say what our dream is. For when, we can say when we want to reach that dream. And for why, we can say why we chose that dream. So now let's look at an example for Part 3. For what, we have travel all around the world. For when, we have over the next 10 years. For why, we have, I have always loved meeting new people and learning about new cultures. Now this is how part 3 would sound. My dream is to travel all around the world. I plan to do this over the next 10 years. I have always loved meeting new people and learning about new cultures. This is also a very clear and concise way of introducing yourself for part 3. Okay, now that we have looked at each part in detail, let's see what the entire English introduction sounds like with part 1, part 2, and part 3 all together. Hello, my name is Peter and I am from Spain. I am a very diligent and outgoing person. My hobby is playing the piano. I love classical music, so I usually play the piano every evening after work. My dream is to travel all around the world. I plan to do this over the next 10 years. I have always loved meeting new people and learning about new cultures. Excellent. Now this is a good English introduction. All right, amazing. Today you learned the 18th secret to speaking English. How to introduce yourself in English. We looked at the 3 parts of an English introduction. Part 1 is, that's right, life. Part 2 is, you got it, hobby. And part 3 is, excellent, dream. Using this secret, you will be able to introduce yourself like a native English speaker. Now, try to introduce yourself in English at least one time today. You can do it. You can speak English. I hope this video helped to give you more confidence in your English ability. If you would like to learn over 125 expressions, vocabulary words, and idioms, have access to over 200 definitions, and on top of all that, have the ability to review over 400 English example sentences, then this gift is for you. Click the link below and get your free Speak English ebook in your inbox today. This has been Speak English with Teacher Tiffany. Have an amazing day. Have a wonderful day. And until next time, remember to speak English. Remember to subscribe.